Hey, what's up, guys? Thug Life back again. Ready to continue video number 2 in our GameMaker 101 series. So, in our first video, we got GameMaker up and running. We got a Metaboy character in here. We got some basic code in to move and have some animation, stuff like that. In this episode, we're gonna build on that and we're gonna add a tile set and some gravity so we can run on like an actual level. And we're gonna add a jump mechanic. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, so to get like a level in here, we're going to use a tile set. You can also do this with objects. There's like pros and cons. I think working with objects for like your floors and walls is easier, but when you're talking about like level design, it's a pain in the butt. Um, so if you want to really build like intricate like platformer levels, it's way easier to work with a tile set. But I do think like the collision system with tile set is a little more difficult than working with an object. So um, if your game is like pretty small in scope, you can do it this way. I actually built Mega Dash like the tiles in Mega Dash are objects and not a tile set. But for this, I'm gonna do a tile set. 'Cause I think people will appreciate this more, like have more flexibility to build a platformer. So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna right-click tile set. We're gonna create a tile set, and oh, actually before that, we're gonna have to add a sprite because I don't have any art in here for my tile set. So I'm gonna create like a subfolder and just call this like tile set art, and we're gonna add a sprite in here. And in this folder, which I'll provide these assets, I'll show you an example of like what a real tile set looks like. So if you can see this, this is a paid asset I have, and I'm not going to use this in the tutorial just because it's paid. I don't want to distribute it because I don't think I'm allowed to do that. But basically, in a tile set, you'll import it, and this top left corner always has to be blank. So whenever you work with tile sets, just remember that top left has to be blank. And then once you import it, you can like pick any of these squares and like paint on the screen however you want your level to look. Super convenient. Um, so that's just like giving an overview of what a real tile set looks like. For this tutorial, we're going to keep it super simple, and we're just going to use this little thing, which is literally one block, um, but it's fine, that'll work. So I'm going to call this S tile set. Bam, good to go. Now we can go back to our tile set, and I'm going to go to sprite. I'm going to call this T for tile set, and just call this like tile set 1. I don't know. I use T for my tile set nomenclature. So now we can pull that sprite that we just input. Bam. And now we want to make sure the width, like the dimensions are set up to properly match this. So this is 128 by 128 pixels. So I'm going to put that in here. And it has it right there. So I think that's all we need to do. Yeah, that should be good to go. Easy peasy. There's some other things you can do here, but these are like more advanced, so we'll leave these for later. But let's go back to our room. Now I need a place to put my tile set. So to be able to like use your tile set, we have to have a tile set layer over here. So I'm going to add that right here, create new tile layer. And over here, these layers, this is the order things are layered on the screen. So if you think of this as like a piece of construction paper, the background will be on the bottom, and I want my player to always like appear in front of the tiles. So I'm going to drop this down. So with our collision system, we should never appear behind tiles, but just in case. But as you're making your game, like in Megaditch, I think I have like 15 layers, something like that. But just the order from front to back, you want things to appear. uh, yeah, the top will always appear on top, and then as you go down, that's kind of how the the layers are ordered. So we have our tile layer now, and over here we're going to click that. No tile set, we're going to click, and we're going to choose the tile set we just created. Awesome. This will appear over here. We have our simple one block tile set, and now I can, yeah, basically you can just like paint this on there. So I can just like paint whatever I want. I might actually make this, I'm going to change the dimensions of this room, make it a little bigger, just to give me more room to work with. Of course, this is going to be dependent on your game with whatever you want to do. You might choose to keep the room the same size and just make your tiles like 64 by 64 or 32 by 22 or just however you want to size it. So I'm going to go back and back to my room editor. Whoops, sorry, got off track here. So if you right click, it'll delete. And if we had a real tile set, you could like pick different tiles to paint with. But yeah, I'm just gonna make something like really simple, just like a box. Alright, cool. So now I have tiles. If I hit my play button, alright, well I have tiles, but it doesn't really do anything, and I can go right through them. Yeah, doesn't do a whole lot. So I think the next thing we'll do is we're going to add some gravity to our player, and we're going to talk about collisions. So he stops here, then you can actually run on the floor, and when you hit the wall, you should stop. So let's work on that next. Alright, so what we're going to do here is we're going to go back to our player object, and we're going to get rid of these up and down key movements and give him some gravity, because what I want him to do, I want him to move left and right, and then I want to use spacebar to jump. So first thing I'm going to do is get rid of these up and down keyboard checks, because I'm not going to use this anymore. Same with my vertical movement. I'm going to retain the left and right movement. I'm going to keep this as well. So we'll have our calculations, but I'm going to get rid of this variable, and instead I'm going to have a variable called yeah, I guess we'll keep the vmove variable, and up here we're just going to say vmove equals vmove plus gravity. So we're going to give him some gravity, and every frame the gravity is going to make him drop basically farther down. It's going to calculate, and so he'll be pulled by gravity down to the floor. But we need to define what gravity is in our create event, so let's do that. And this is kind of just trial and error. If you want him to feel heavy, you can make it higher. If you want him to feel more floaty, you can make it lower. I'm just going to put this at like maybe 0.5 for now. That's probably a fine number. Alright, so we got rid of our up and down keys. We kind of changed the way vertical velocity is calculated. So when I hit play here, he should just drop straight down. And we still don't have any collisions in yet for the tile set, so he's going to fall straight through the floor, which is fine. We'll get that fixed next, but let's see how this works. Oh, I have an error. I have oPlayer vmove not set before reading it. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I make a lot of mistakes too, like iterating as you go, but what I did in this equation is trying to calculate this. vmove equals this. Well, this wasn't defined for the first frame, so I need to throw it in I need to initialize this variable. So I'm just going to say vmove to start is going to equal 0. So now it'll know, okay, vmove equals 0 plus gravity, and then it'll iterate. So now this should work. So that does exactly what we expect. We have some gravity. He falls through the floor. Alright. So next, let's talk about collisions. So getting collisions right is actually kind of difficult. I'm going to explain what's happening here, and I'm not going to lie, I don't like thinking about this every time. So I write scripts to handle this for me, but then once you have the scripts written, you can just like run the script and you're good to go forever, pretty much. But I just want to give you some insight on like how this is created, and if it doesn't make sense, that's okay. I will just give you the collision code, but I kind of want to explain what's happening here. So our guy right now is falling with gravity, and we want, when it gets to about here, we want the game to say, oh, yeah, we're touching the floor, so we want to put him here. That's kind of what we're thinking. So we're going to have a script that's checking collisions for every frame. It's like, nope, not colliding, not colliding, not colliding. And in a perfect world, you would hit right here and stop. And that's good. But sometimes you're traveling like at high speeds or falling at high speeds, and like if you're, say you're here, so right here you're not colliding, but then the next frame you're gonna fall like 15 pixels, you might go from here to here in one frame, and then stopping is not good enough. So what you have to do is in this frame, calculate where you're gonna be next. So like you can say from here, okay, I'm like next frame, I'm gonna be here. Oh, well that's a problem. And then we're gonna have a while loop that says while I'm colliding, we're gonna go up one pixel at a time until we're no longer colliding, and then we're gonna draw the next frame here. It's important to do it while we're here, and don't run the check calculation while you're here, because now if you're down here, it'll also think you're colliding left to right with walls, which you're not. So if you calculate it here, it'll say, okay, next frame, yeah, I'm gonna have a floor collision, but no wall collisions. So it's kind of confusing. Order of operations is important. I'm gonna walk through the code, and if it doesn't make sense, that's okay. You can just use the scripts, but I just want to give some background on how this works. And for the wall collisions, it's the same thing. So if you're running to the right, yeah, you want to stop here. But if you're running fast enough, your next frame might end you up here. And so again, we're going to have a while loop that says, oh, we're collided. We're going to keep moving one pixel to the left until checking every time until, okay, now we're not colliding, and now we're good. So that's essentially how it works. So yeah, let's jump back to GameMaker, and I'll show you how to code that up. Alright, so back over to GameMaker. We're back in the player object, and we're going to go back to the create event. And the first thing we're going to do is tell the player object what tile set it's looking for collisions. So I'm just going to call this collision map. And so we're going to do layer get ID. So I'm going to get the layer of tiles 1. So each layer is assigned an ID number. I'm just going to grab that for this tile set layer right here. That's what we're looking for our collisions. And then we're going to wrap that with another function called layer tile map get ID. So all this is really saying is like just check this layer and get the tile map within this layer, and that's going to assign that tile map ID to this variable. And now for our collision system, we can check against that tile map. So we're good there. Alright, Alright, so now we're going to jump back over to our player step event, and we're going to put these collisions in. So right after we calculate movement, we're going to put a little section for check collisions, and then after we check collisions, we're going to adjust movement. So I guess before we put these in, I just want to show kind of how I think about step events, and there's probably more than like one way to skin this cat, but this is what works for me. So for my player, I always get inputs first every frame, and then we calculate movement based on those inputs, and then we check collisions. So this says next frame you should be here, and this checks to make sure that like the next frame you're not going to hit a wall or a floor. And then we'll use those while loops we discussed previously to adjust from there. And then I work all my jumps and attacks after that, and then at the end, based on whether you're like running or standing still or in the air, finally we'll pick our animation and our frames for our character to make sure that they're doing the right thing. So right now we're going to work on these two things. So let's get back to it. So check collisions. We're going to have 3 different checks here. We're going to have let's call this like wall collision equals wall collision check. We'll call this vert collision equals vert collision check. And then I'm going to have a floor check equals, I guess, equals floor check. Something like that. So, yeah, we're going to have a wall collision. That, you know, obviously if you want to run into the walls, you want to know that. Vertical collision, so if we're hitting the floor or the ceiling, we want to know so we can check for those collisions. And then this floor check is only going to check the floor for our jumping logic, which we'll put in later, because we don't want to reset our jump if we hit our head on the ceiling. So we only want to do this if we hit the floor. So we're going to write scripts for each of these, and then we'll never have to calculate this again. If you want to check collisions, you can just go back and reference the script. So to do that, we're going to come over here to our scripts, create script. So this first one, I think we called it wall collision check. Okay, so this one, when we were calculating our movement, we called this h move for our horizontal velocity. So we're going to reference that. We're going to say if h move is greater than or equal to 0, b-box side, I'll explain this in a second, equals b-box right. Alright, so I got my little graphic pulled back up here. So if we're moving to the right, we want to check the right side of our object. So this is like the dot is the middle, obviously, and the box represents the hitbox. If we're moving right, we only care about this right side of the hitbox. So we're saying if we're moving right, then the side we care about is this built-in variable, the right side of our hitbox. Otherwise, if we're not moving right, we're going to do an else b-box side equals b-box left. That way, if we're moving to the left, the side we care about is going to be the left side of this hitbox. Okay, so now we're going to check if we collide with the tile map. So we're going to say if tile map get at pixel. So the first thing we're going to reference our collision map, which we defined in the create event for our character. And now we have to define the x and y. So the coordinates we want to check for this is going to be b box side. We want to check the x coordinate of whichever side is relevant, and then we're going to say b box top for the y coordinate. So one more thing to consider here is that, you know, if you're moving side to side, let's say like we didn't have tiles here. So if you were moving to the right and you hit a tile like this, where the top corner is hitting but the bottom corner is not, you would still consider that a collision and want your character to stop. So we need to check both the top corner and the bottom corner. So we're going to say if this does not equal 0, if that's the case, we're going to return 1. So if we return 1, that indicates there was a collision. So if this tile map get at pixel, if this comes back as 0, there's no collision. If it comes back as any other number, then we'll say, yeah, there was a collision. So my else is going to be for, you know, if it did come back as 0, we're going to return 0, saying, yeah, there's no wall collision for this. So we covered the top corner of the box here. As I mentioned, we want to check the bottom corner as well. So I'm actually going to open this back up. And we're going to do or, and we're going to copy and paste this whole thing. I'm going to change this to bbox bottom. Close that out. So we're saying if we hit a tile with the appropriate side in the top corner or bottom corner, then yeah, it's a wall collision. Otherwise, no, it's not. Alright, so that's our wall collision. I think we're good there. Next, we have to define our vertical collision check. I think that's what we called it. Oh, we just called it vert collision check. Vert collision check. And this is going to be the same thing, but we're going to use vmove now because we're moving in the vertical direction. So vmove is greater than or equal to 0. bbox side equals bbox bottom. So if we're moving positive, which don't forget, moving down is the positive direction, always throws me off. So if velocity is positive, we're moving down, we care about the bottom of the hitbox. If we're not moving down, else, we care about the top of the hitbox. Alright, and then this is going to be the same thing here. We're going to check our collision with the tile map. So if tile map get at pixel collision map, but then here we're going to say, so the same concept applies here in the vertical direction. So let's say we were going up and we hit like this. So we got to check both corners. So we're going to do the same thing here. So for in the x direction, first we're going to care about bbox left for left corner, and then for the y, it's going to be whichever side we care about, top or bottom. So just bbox side. And check that that doesn't equal 0. And now we're going to do the same thing as above, where we do kind of a copy paste. but we're just going to change this one to bbox to right to check the right corner. And if those are not equal to 0, we return 1 to indicate a vertical collision. Otherwise, we return 0 to indicate no vertical collision. Alright, so we have both vertical and horizontal checks in here. Finally, we're going to have a third one just to check for like a special use case, which I'll explain here in a second. We're just going to call this one floor check. So what this does is this only checks if we're on the floor. It doesn't care about the ceiling, and we're going to use this one specifically for our jump logic. When we go to jump, we want to make sure we're on the floor before we can jump. We don't want to count the ceiling, so we only care about the floor. So what we're going to do here is we're going to copy this, and we're going to say if vMove is greater than or equal to 0, bbox side, we care about the bottom of the hitbox, great. Else, if our vMove is negative and we're moving up, then we're obviously not on the floor, so we're not even consider this case, and we're just going to return 0. And then it's going to run the same check, but one thing we're going to do here, so on a case where you're running on the floor, you're actually not colliding here, but we want it to count that we're on the floor, so we're going to add 1 pixel to see if we're running on the floor. So down here on bbox side, we're just going to add 1. So it adds from the bottom of your hitbox, it adds 1 pixel down to check if you're on the floor, and same over here. Alright, and that is our floor check, and we'll use that for our jump logic here in a little bit. Oh, and don't put semicolons after these, that's silly. Alright, now we're good. Okay, so our collision logic should be in a good spot. Let's go back to our player event. I'm going to change this because I think I have variable naming problems here. I'm just going to call it floor collision check. I'm going to go back and change this one. Floor collision check. Okay. Yeah, these should be yellow, these should be blue. Now we should be good. So yeah, I guess kind of back to the way I like to do things. We have our inputs, calculate movement, check our collisions, and now we have to adjust our movement. And we're going to do that with a while loop. So let's just start in the vertical direction here. So I'm going to say if vert collision equals 1. So if it detects a vertical collision, we're going to say, okay, stop moving. vMove equals 0. And then, you know, based off of like gravity and stuff, you could be working with not whole numbers. So we're going to take that whatever y value we currently have and turn it into a whole number to make it better to work with. And then we're going to jump into a while loop here. So while vertical collision equals 1, we're going to say y equals y minus 1. So this is going to keep moving us up 1 pixel at a time until vert collision vertical. Oops. I could just copy to the above. I'm doing this the hard way. Okay, so we're going to move up 1 pixel at a time recheck the collision, move up, recheck, and we're going to keep doing that until it says, okay, we're no longer colliding, and then we're just going to stop. Cool. So I think now that we have this in, we're going to hit the play button. Our player is going to fall due to gravity. Eventually he's going to hit the floor. The check's going to come back good. And then while he's touching the floor, we're going to move up 1 pixel at a time until we're stopped. So we should be able to walk on the floor now. So let's hit the play button and see what this says. Awesome. Cool. So I don't have jump or anything yet, but yeah, we're on the floor. And that worked perfectly. Let's see it one more time. Boom. Okay, so one thing to consider for this, and I don't have a ceiling right now, so we're going to skip this and come back to it later. But this y equals y minus 1 will only move you up. So this only works for the floor right now. To adjust movement for like a ceiling collision later, we'd have to consider your v move direction and then maybe do like a y equals y plus 1 for a ceiling case. But we'll cover that a little bit. Alright, so finally the last thing for this video, let's get a jump key in here real quick so we can really put that vertical collision to the test, and it'll be cool that we can just do some running and jumping. So we're going to go back to our inputs up here. We're going to do something called like key jump equals keyboard check pressed. And I'm doing keyboard check pressed because I only want to check on the first frame where you hit it and not continuously. We're going to say VK space. So I'm going to jump with spacebar. Alright, and now I'm going to go down here between adjust movement and animations. I'm going to do my jump logic. And we're going to say if key jump equals 1 and floor check equals 1, then we're going to run some code. So this says if you hit the jump key and you're on the floor, do this. If you're not on the floor, it's not going to work. You have to be on the floor. So we're just going to give him a big boost of vertical velocity. So we're just like vmove equals minus 15. That should be good. And really, for a basic jump, it's that simple. Let's just see what happens here. And alright, we can jump. The animation's kind of off, and it's not like the smoothest when you let go of the space bar. I don't really have that much control. So let's fix those things real quick, and then we'll be done with this video. So we can get into like double jumps and stuff, which requires a little more thought and logic, but one easy quality of life thing I like is just to say if vmove is less than 0. So if we're moving in the upward direction, and here we're gonna have to actually change one of our inputs real quick. We're gonna call this key jump start, and then we're gonna call this key jump. And so key jump start just checks the first time it's pressed, and key jump is going to check that you're still holding it every frame. So once you release it, we can drop back down. So I have key jump start, key jump, check pressed, check for spacebar. So we're going to change this to key jump start, and then if we're moving up, and key jump equals 0, then vmove is going to equal 0. So this is like if you're moving upwards and it detects that you let go of the spacebar, it's going to set your velocity to 0. So you can start moving back down. This just gives you like a little bit more control over your character. So you can see like if I hold it a long time, or I can just like do a quick little jump now. So um, there's a lot of ways to make jumps feel better, but this is like a real easy quality of life thing for me to make jumps feel really good as a player. And finally, let's animate this. So with the Metaboy run frame, what I've been doing in my games, I've just been using frames 4 and 10. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So I use this one for like jumping up. I just like freeze it on this frame. And then for falling, I use this, and it seems to work pretty well. So I'm just gonna say if floor check equals 0 and you're moving up, show this. If floor check is 0 and you're moving down, show this. So let's do that. So we're going to have to change these. We're going to say and floor check equals 1. So for these guys down here, okay. Now we're going to say if VSP is less than or equal to 0 and floor check equals 0, we're going to do sprite index equals sPlayer run image index. So we're moving upward, it's going to equal 4. Else if VSP is greater than 0 and floor check equals 0. So if we're moving in the downward direction, we're going to set image index equal to 10. Oh, and we got to set image speed. Actually, that should be okay. I think that'll be okay. If we need to set image speed to 0, we can, but I don't think we do for this. And then also here, we're going to have to add an else if to say else if h move equals 0 and floor check equals 1. Okay, so up here, if we're on the floor, we're either going to stand or run, depending on if we're moving left and right or not. Over here, if we're in the air, floor check is 0. We're going to pick an animation depending on if we're moving up or down. And then down here, this remains unchanged. This is just whether you're facing left or right. Oh, I have this bad habit of using VSP. I use it for another project. This is vmove. I apologize. Sorry, the end of this video got kind of messy. Hopefully you can kind of keep up with all that. Alright, so we got our jump keys in here. We have our jump logic in here. And we have our animations. Let's see what happens. Alright. You can jump. You can see the animation change while you're in the air. That's pretty cool. I can jump low with spacebar or jump high. It feels pretty good. One thing you're going to notice here though, if I run into the wall, I'm going to get stuck. And that's actually to be expected, because back in the adjust movement right here, I don't have the adjust movement set up for horizontal collisions. So you move like into the wall and then get stuck in this loop forever. But we'll fix that first thing in the next video. I think this is good. This video is already kind of long, so this is a good place to stop. Just to recap, we're able to get, get the tile sets in here, get some jumping, get some good collision work done. So yeah, in the next one, we'll get this horizontal collision buttoned up, and maybe we can get an enemy in here and start shooting some stuff. So yeah, appreciate y'all, and we'll see you on the next video. Thug Life out.